Imagine. Wow, just imagine. Imagine. We hold that in our hearts and in our minds and see that come to life in our lifetimes. Yes, yes. So happy spring. We celebrated the first day of spring this week, and the sun is shining, the birds are singing, the breeze is blowing, life is blooming everywhere, and that breeze that's blowing is blowing all of that pollen right into my eyes and all over my car. And I love it because I love spring. Life is inviting us into a greater expression of us as life. Life is inviting us always forward, always forward. Life is enticing us to surrender. Life's enticing us to surrender to life itself. And that seed of life that's in us, that power of life. Life is enticing us to surrender to that presence and power that moves in all of us, that we just recited. We're drawn to that. Life is enticing us to surrender to that essence and energy that moves in all the universe. That which is greater than our biggest imaginings and as intimate as our breath. To surrender to that. To surrender to that which is the source of all life and the cause of all love. We're invited to surrender. I don't know about you, but for me, surrender was a really big challenge. To just let go and let life unfold. You know, I got comfortable with the idea of yielding because I could envision that. You know, when I yield into traffic, I gauge what's coming and then I move into what's happening. I could see that. But to surrender into something that I couldn't see, I had a little bit of a difficulty with that. I understood clearly that I don't have much, if any, control in life, but I do have charge. I do have dominion over myself. I don't have any control about the weather, but I have complete and total dominion how I respond to the weather. How I choose my clothing depending on the weather, carry an umbrella if it's going to rain, or I might change my activities depending on the weather. So I have some dominion, I have some charge in that. I have no control over how people are going to respond to me, but I have total dominion and charge over how I show up. Some people are going to like me, some people are not going to like me. Our energies are going to match and we're going to get along just fine. Our energies are going to be in different places. I know none of you have ever experienced that, but it's true. It happens for some of us. But I have total charge of how I show up for each and every person I encounter. You see, surrender, turns out, is a superpower. Who knew? Many of us have practiced this superpower of surrender and lived into those endless possibilities of what life might look like. In those endless possibilities when we surrender and yield to the flow of the universe. And we've all been in that flow of the universe. We felt it, right? Yes? We've all been there, yes. And some of us have experienced the outcome when we resist that flow. Yeah? Yeah, I see some heads shaking, yes. When we resist that flow, life becomes a challenge. We're always pushing up against life instead of moving with life. So I've learned to respect and honor the idea of surrender. And during this beautiful season of Lent, when everything's coming alive and we're called into that life, we practice the process of surrender over and over and over again in this Lenten season, kind of letting go and releasing things and habits and cravings that keep us from realizing and expressing all that we really are, the truth of us, from expressing our divinity to its fullest. And it keeps us from those things that keep us from experiencing that rich, deep relationship with our source, whatever you call that, that is embedded in you, yearning to express as you. We surrender and we release and we let go of all of those things. And we learn that we can live in harmony, in beautiful harmony with that divine presence. We release and let go of all of those things that keep us from trusting that the flow of life, that the universe is upholding our good. In the face of us not seeing our good in our daily experience quite yet. We might be in the midst of a challenge, an upset, a surprise in life, and we haven't yet gotten to see the good. So this 40 days of Lent is a deep practice in releasing, in yielding, and in surrendering. And we have in this life of Jesus an exquisite example of surrender. It's written in all 4 of the Gospels. The story of Jesus, after observing the Passover meal with his disciples, he gathered together Peter, who represents faith. He called James, who represents our strength, and he called John, who represents love. He took his faith, his strength, and his love, and off to Gethsemane they went to pray. And we're going to listen to the story from Mark 14:35. They came to the place which was named Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, "Sit here while I pray." He took with him Peter, James, and John, and began to be greatly troubled and distressed. He said to them, "My soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. So stay here and watch for a while." He went forward a little and fell to the ground and prayed that if it were possible, the hour might pass away from him. He said, "Abba, Father, for all things are possible for you. Please remove this cup from me. However, not what I desire, what you desire." Beautiful example of surrender. Surrendering. And even in that moment, Jesus asked, "Let this cup pass from me." Seems like a perfectly appropriate response from someone experiencing their humanness, and Jesus was 100% human. In the face of uncertainty, in the face of trepidation, and in the face of the unknown, in this, Jesus showed us that he was pure human. We have asked, "Let this cup pass." And yet Jesus didn't stop there. Yes, he asked, "Let this cup pass." But he stood in his faith, he stood in his strength, and he trusted the love. not as I desire, but as you desire. How often have we come face to face with some challenge, some obstacle, some big surprise in life that we weren't expecting, and it kind of shakes our foundation, and we say, let this cup pass, and we stop. When the opportunity for surrender is there, we say, nah, I don't think so. I got this. No, thank you. Let this cup pass, and we stop. I wonder how many glorious adventures with spirit I have missed by stopping at that let this cup pass. Wonder if you may have had any. Sitting in that space of resistance rather than allowing myself to surrender, to fall into the flow, and to live in trust. What might I be resisting? What might I be fearful of? Mostly it's the unknown. And you know the saying, "Oh, you of little faith, I have not had the faith to surrender into that unknown." It can be beautiful to experience, to go to that place of let this cup pass and take a deep breath, or maybe 2 or 1,000, and then say, not as I will, but as you desire. It's courage. And Jesus showed us this courage through the crucifixion and through the resurrection. Just what we might experience in surrender. If Jesus had stopped with, let this cup pass, if he had not gone on, there would have been no crucifixion, there would have been no resurrection, there would have been no transformation, there would have been no transcending the human experience for the spiritual experience of life. There would have been no awe and wonder in the women who arrived at the tomb the morning after Passover. There would have been no awe and wonder in the disciples and their encounters with Jesus after his resurrection. There would have been no awe or wonder. There would have been no example for us today to see that we might overcome our human frailties. Every one of these human experiences that come up for us, how we might overcome them by rising from what the world shows us, what our mind creates for us, and transcending and transforming that into spirit, into the goodness with which it intends. We might miss the spiritual awareness, the spiritual consciousness, the gift and the wisdom and the understanding that we gain from any of our life experiences. And we've all had them, that once we walk through the messiness of life, there's something glorious and wonderful for us to know and to have and to be. And in his book called Just This, a book that I go to very often for time of contemplation, Father Richard Rohr says this space, this moment of awe where we can surrender, and I say where our spirit form actually wants to surrender, because we're in that time of contemplation, we've formed that bond with the one, with our source, and we're in that magical, mystical space, and we want more of that. And there's a part of us that wants to surrender, but we resist it. But in that spaciousness of surrender, we can notice a greater truth, a divine truth. We can notice the beauty in life experiences. We can notice and embrace the wisdom. We can garner those pearls of wisdom and those gifts. But that lay beyond the limits and the constructs of our human mind. That's our spirit mind. Beyond the boundaries and thinking that have been established in us by our generational teaching, by our embedded theologies, and by our institutional indoctrinations. This is so far beyond that. It's in that time of contemplation that we can arrive at, let this cup pass, take a breath, and move into not as I desire, but as you desire. So think of a time that you surrendered to that presence that compelled you to go in a certain direction in your life. Think of a time when you yielded and you stopped resisting and you let go and you just fell into that beautiful flow of the universe and life. Think of that time. Yes, I see smiles forming because you have experienced that. You have lived that. You have lived the glorious adventure of surrender. We've all done that. Now I wonder today, in this beautiful beginning of spring, in this season of Advent, what is calling you today? Where do you feel that resistance? What is asking your heart to surrender? Notice the invitation of life calling you forward. Notice what moves in you that pushes against that call of life. Just notice. And when you are standing at that place of let this cup pass, don't stop there. You miss the joy. You miss the brilliance of spirit. You miss the magic and mystical movement of spirit. Take that breath, or 1,000, however many you need to say yes, and step into that place, not as I will, not as I desire, but as you desire. Allow yourself to drift and move into that field of infinite possibilities, unlimited potential, into the allness that God is calling you into. And allow surrender. Allow yourself to float and drift in that field. Feel the unknowing and yet allowing all that wishes to be made manifest for you. Allow it to be in that presence of surrender. Feel that? Can you feel a little twinge of excitement and that possibility of what might be beyond let this cup pass? Do you feel the opportunities for trusting and standing in your faith? To calling on your strength to stay the course? And wrapping yourself in love, those disciples that Jesus took with him, Peter, James, and John, to wrap yourself in that love that brings to you everything that you need and brings you to all of that as well in the mere process of surrender. And we always remember that whatever we do, that we let all we do be done with love. Namaste.